Listen, we'll get on to some of the controversies, but overall the fight, Usyk dominated. Is that fair to say, Spencer? Am I using the right language in boxing terms? There was only ever one winner from the start. I couldn't see anything else from just watching the fight.
Absolutely, yeah, he dominated. That's a fair assessment. I think that what we recognised was that Daniel just wasn't good enough, and we talked about all this stuff going on in the background. You know, the build up to the fight,
sure,
etc.,
but
etc.
then the bell goes,
and that doesn't help. Of course, it doesn't. When the bell goes, you know, you got to go out there and you deliver like that. You know, and you soon recognised from the opening bell, I think it's fair to say, Simon, when as soon as Usyk started getting that jab together, he was controlling the space. You know, he was upping the tempo when he wanted to up the tempo. He was going on the back foot when he wanted to go on the back foot. There was a lot of talk about, you know, that Daniel pushing him back early on and everything else. But even on the back foot, Oleksandr Usyk was in control. He was setting traps. You know, this guy went to another level. It's one of the career best performances. I know a lot of people talking about a poor performance by Daniel Dubois, but that was just the brilliance of Oleksandr Usyk. This guy is, you know, I think he'll go down as an all-time great for sure.
I won twice undisputed. Now, of course, it depends on the era you're doing that in.
3-time undisputed, if you include the cruiserweight
title. Yeah, I mean, I think his place in the pantheon is already pretty well established. And you know, they can't find anybody to not just to beat him, but really to compete with him. There being one or two. Listen, of course, because of things that have happened in previous fights with Daniel Dubois, then came the accusation, if that's the right word, or certainly the inference that he had quit. There's no other way of putting it. For instance, here's Fabio Wardley Wardley, I keep calling him that, disagreeing with that assessment on Drive earlier.
I think there can be a level of realisation of I'm beaten here. He has my number. He has me figured out. The plan A is not working. Plan B and C isn't working. And don't get me wrong, some fighters choose to dig down and try and just swing for the fences and see if something comes off, and other fighters sit there and think, you know what, someone like Daniel as well, young, still got a lot of talent, a lot ahead of him, just goes, you know what, tonight's not my night, this isn't my fight, this is not the one for me. Almost not save myself for another day, not like he was in a grueling 12-round war, but he just goes, you know what, maybe this is not the one, go back to the drawing board and I'll restart from there. So I wouldn't like to put the word quit on him.
Yeah, I think it's really cruel to say to boxers that they quit. That's far too much, because they got in there in the first place. What did you make of the end of the fight, Simon? Because, you know, as Fabio was saying there, you can look to the future.
Well, it's interesting that Fabio characterises it that way, because we're talking about his whole assessment of the fight, about how it cannot be your night. You mean like you, Fabio, when you were fighting Justice Hooney 6 weeks ago, and it looked like it was not going to be your night at all when a punch from the gods came in and dealt with a fight that was going completely against you. I don't think that you can save yourself for another night when you're fighting for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, with all the belts on offer in the biggest fight in British boxing and the biggest fight in British boxing history. I don't think you can. It's a difficult one to call somebody a quitter. I think Daniel is programmed to accept the outcome in a different way than other fighters that might have bitten more down on their gum shoulder have done.
Yeah, and I think that, look, they're gladiatorial fighters. When you get in there at any sort of level, like the word quitter and swallowed it, I don't like that, because different fighters have different pain thresholds. And like Simon said there, you know, different fighters, like Cole Froch is a great example as well, where they don't lose spirit, they don't lose heart, and they stick in there and they do that. But other fighters are different. They're more sensitive. They're, you know, and it's not about swallowing it. I think it was about, you know, we're talking about the first 4 rounds there where Oleksandr Usyk was just chipping away and he was getting more and more success, and Daniel recognised that he just weren't good enough, and he was at that stage. He got knocked down the first time, and the second time was a heavy knockdown, and he's down there. And then the question is, could he have got up? Yeah, of course he could have probably got up, because he got up after the 10 count and he walked straight over to his corner. But he probably recognised at that stage, I'm not good enough. I'm just going to get up, and it's only going to go one way. So I totally understand it, but the word swallowed and quit is a wrong word to use, I think, because these guys are gladiatorial and they get in there and they give it their all. And Daniel done it, and it just wasn't good enough.
I mean, every person is different, but you, in moments of adversity, what goes through? Does anything go through your mind, Spencer, or is it just pure instinct? Whether you're going to keep going or you're going to say, I'm losing this fight. I mean, try and think back into your own time in that ring.
I'm already there. I totally understand it. There's, like I say, different fighters have got different pain thresholds, and different fighters have got different mental approaches about it. Like, so I'm the type of fighter that go, you got to pin me down to the floor to get me out there, and effectively that's what happened. I got carried out, and I ended up in a 2-week coma because that's where I was at, and that was like sort of my mindset.
Welcome back, Spencer.
Absolutely, but what I'm saying is, different fighters they think differently, and I think so. That's where you're at with it. But you go, when you got the undisputed world heavyweight title on the line, you know, for me, my mindset is like, I'm getting up and I'm going to give it another go because one shot can turn it around, and that's sort of the way that you think. But
I also think, though, to assess the fight in the briefest of times, I think that Daniel's psychological approach to the fight was wrong in the first. I liked him in the first round. I actually thought the first round, up until the point he gets Usyk in the corner and does nothing with him, which is the one place that you want Oleksandr Usyk. The one place that Oleksandr Usyk doesn't go is get himself put in a corner, and Daniel didn't let his hands go, and from that moment I felt worried for Daniel, because I thought the very thing that Daniel was going to do was prepared to take a risk and prepared to let his hands go, because the one way he could win that fight was doing that, and he didn't want to. And that told me something, and that might be to do with the preparation, which is why he and I made such a song and dance and a dog and pony show about why he wasn't prepared for this fight in the right way. But part of me, and it's not my right to say it, but I'm relatively bold and stupid in equal measure, I do think there is an element of a gag reflex in Daniel that enabled him to prepare to accept the defeat. Now, it isn't Roberto Duran against Sugar Ray Leonard. We know that. And it isn't potentially Ben Whittaker against Liam Cameron. But there is a kind of fighter that doesn't know he's beaten. And Daniel, I felt that Daniel was prepared to accept the defeat.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, that's a great assessment, and I think that, look, when you're looking at this and you're looking at that side of it, you go, like, Don Charles, by the way, had a game plan. I knew that game plan before they went in there, because I was in the gym in the weeks build up to that.
Right.
And they said, listen, and that's right. And I said to Simon, if they can implement this game plan in there, we've got a real fight, because they knew where it went right and wrong. When the bell rings, Don Charles is no longer a part of that, right? So Don Charles is a great fight trainer, and he had a great game plan. Daniel went in there, and Simon's right. The game plan was working. He got him backed up. He got him where he needs to be. He imposed his physical strength. Lennox Lewis talks about that as well. He said, when I boxed Evander Holyfield, I needed to impose my physical strength, my attributes, and then let my hands go when he was punching. Daniel done all of that, and then the final bit, the final hurdle, he never let his hands go. Why not? Because he didn't have confidence in his own ability. And I think that goes back to maybe revert back to what you know, back from the last fight. And he got him there, and you go, right, Daniel, let's go. Let your hands go. And he didn't do it.
Even if you take one on the way in, you signal intent. You signal that you mean what you said you were going to do, and this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. Following our discussion of just how superior Usyk was to Daniel Dubois, I'm going to ask you, obviously, what's next for Daniel Dubois, but Spencer Oliver. An equally, I think, pertinent question is, what's next for Oleksandr Usyk? Because they're running out of people to put in front of him for the second time.
Well, they've run out of people to put in front of him, haven't they? Because everyone they put in front of him, every leading contender, he's beaten twice. So
it's extraordinary, isn't it?
So you go, where does this guy now find the motivation to continue boxing? Because he could sail off into the sunset and he'll go down in history as one of, if not the best to ever do it.
I guess the counter-argument to that is, if he's still in the condition it appeared to be in northwest London recently, he can probably put another £150 million in his bank with 2 or 3 big fights.
I totally agree with that, but at the risk of risking your legacy and your place in history, and you go, like, how much money do you need? And I think, look, where Oleksandr Usyk finds a motivation, and he talked about this through the week actually, is through his people, through what his country's going through, giving them hope, leadership and all that sort of stuff. And I understand that, he's a man, like, he's something much bigger outside of boxing. That's what makes him so special. When we talk about Muhammad Ali and how good he was, and a lot of fighters around that era, I think we heard George Foreman saying it, and we heard Joe Frazier saying it, saying he wasn't the greatest that ever boxed in the ring, but he was the greatest sportsman, the greatest person, because of what he stood up outside the ring.
Sure.
Alexander's sort of gone down that road. And how ironic, by the way, that Oleksandr Usyk and Muhammad Ali were both born on January the 17th. They were both the same height. They had both the same reach, and they both achieved what they've achieved.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you asked Oleksandr Usyk, do you want to be a representative for your country's travails? Of course, before the war, he just said no, but because who wants to be carrying around that with you? But now, whether he likes it or not, he is very much that. Incidentally, I noticed how very polite, but also very stern. The security were at Wembley the other day, because of course Usyk is the second most important Ukrainian person on the planet. They were being very, very careful about him.
It'd be fascinating to see where the money is for these fights, because the scale of earnings from the Dubois fight would have been nowhere near what they've earned previously, because the Saudis weren't at the table. You look at the fights that are there, where are they going to be? I mean, Joe Parker may get his shot, possibly not, because he'll vacate the WBO. But you say, oh, he can do 2 or 3 fights, so you can make another 150 million quid. I'm not sure that. I'm not sure that's right.
And I think also at this stage of his career, because he's in the twilight of his career, he's 38 years of age, and there will be wear and tear there. At some point he's going to look at that and go,
even if he's not in the ring, it's inspiring, isn't it?
Yes, it's all the training that goes into that, the training camps, etc. So the fighting really is the easy part. So what you put your body, the grueling part, you put your body through in the build up to that, because the hard work is done before the first bell rings. Yeah, that 45 minutes that you're in the ring, or the 36 minutes of fighting that you're in the ring, you look at that and go, yeah, that is difficult and it's grueling. But what you go through before that, trust me, with the early morning runs and the sparring and all that, that's where the wear and tear is done. So for me, I think Usyk is 1 and out. He's going to go one more and he'll be done, that's for sure.
Who the hell is that going to be?
Well, me and Simon had the guy that we would like to see on, and I think it's the guy that deserves the opportunity, and that's Joseph Parker. I think he's rebuilt. He's a former world champion, and he deserves that opportunity, because he's in that. We were talking about this, Simon, weren't we? He's in that no man's land at the moment where he doesn't even know what's going on. He's come off the victory over Deontay Wilder and Zhele Zhang, the two danger men of the division. He's won both of those. He's put himself in the position. And when we asked him the question on Talk Boxing, the answer was, I really don't know what's happening. Yeah. And he is the WBO interim world champion, so that's next in line,
the thing for him is that he's in the right place with Frank. Yeah. Frank Warren engineers best outcomes.
I agree.
Look at Anthony Yard getting another world title shot. Yeah. Or it's not a world title shot, but world title shot, isn't he, against Benavidez. Yeah. So you look at that and Frank will orchestrate an outcome. But Joseph Parker is an unfortunate circumstance, because he was supposed to fight Daniel Dubois in January, doesn't fight Daniel Dubois, ends up fighting Martin Bakole, which advanced him nowhere, and sits in limbo waiting for an opportunity.
Well, here's the interesting one for me, because of the situation of these belts and whether they'll fragment or not. Now, next in line for the WBO title is Joseph Parker. Yeah. We believe that title may become vacant.
For the IBF.
So Derek Chisora is in line for the IBF. But talking about this...
Bakole for the WBC.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got Cabiel there for the WBC as well, who's the interim champion. So where I'm going with this, Danny, is you go... Moses Atoma is number 1 WBO there as well. This is the new kid on the block, the hot shot. We could find ourselves in a situation, and I don't know where Frank would be on this one, whether he'd feel that it's time for Moses to go or not, because we know how great this kid's going to be, and Frank is the best at engineering those and directing them and taking the right fights at the right time. But we could find ourselves in a situation where we get Joseph Parker for Moses Atoma for the vacant title, which would be absolutely
I get
insane.
The impression that Frank might quite fancy that.
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, Daniel Dubois, there's a whole raft of people. AJ is one of them. Tyson Fury's another. He will come back, I presume, after he's finished filming his latest TV
Netflix,
series.
Yeah.
Look, this is not the bum of the month club, but we're building up huge fights here, possibly taking place in football stadiums between, let's call it what it is, it's the victims of Usyk club. Why do people, help me with this, why do people still want to see these people fight each other?
I'll tell you why, because we are very, very blessed, right? When we look back on this, when we're going to call these the good old days, in 10, 15 years' time, we remember the good old days when the best fought the best, and we never had that for years.
Sure.
You speak to Frank Warren, you speak to Eddie Hearn, and them guys, the politics of boxing didn't allow those to get the big fights on, and we missed certain fights of certain eras. We're not getting that now with the investment of Saudi Arabia and Riyadh season and all that, I think, and the ring, we are now getting these fights. So everyone is fighting everyone. And like you talk about, a lot of people saying, it's a battle of the losers club. No, we're talking about one guy of brilliance that we're talking about, not just the best of this generation, but the best of all time. Oleksandr Usyk now has put himself in that argument, Simon, where you go, was he better than Muhammad Ali?
Course,
was he better than George Foreman? Like, he has put himself in that argument.
In such a rarefied air at this moment in time. It's like I went down to Ipswich to watch Fabio fight Justice Hooney in a packed Ipswich Town Stadium. And they're at this level now. You've got fighters, that the intrigue and the energy and the juice around boxing is ultimately because Frank Warren opened the door to Saudi and to Turkey Al-Sheikh. Everyone's walked through it. It's raised the level. It'll come back down again economically because it can't sustain without Saudi money. It'll find its own level again. But the levels are there. And now the interesting thing for Daniel Dubois, to answer your question, is he can't drop down to fight, with respect, Fabio Wardley or other fighters that are at British level aspiring to go up to a higher level. he probably is going to have to go in there with another live one inside the top 10, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that Fabio's inside the top 10, but I'm talking about someone like a Caballel or someone of that nature.
Yeah, like that's where you would suspect he goes. And it's interesting, actually, Big Tyson Fury, who will be coming back in 2026, he says, I'd welcome a fight with Daniel Dubois. I'd actually have him up here training with me. But, that's the sort of fight now where you go, Simon's right with what he says. Daniel Dubois now is in his prime. He is a former world champion. He's at elite level. He's 27 years of age. And what we saw from the defeat from Usyk the first time is the kid did go back to the drawing board, worked very well, come back bigger, better, stronger. Can he do it again? Sometimes these losses can mould a fighter.
Sure.
And you go, what about a fight with someone like him and Tyson Fury? That is a fight that is sell, because we're talking about fights here now that are commercially...
Yes.
We're talking about that sort of revenue. They have to be commercially right. And I think that sort of fight, we can see something like that. Or even with a rematch with Anthony Joshua, something like that to get yourself in line for a shot again. I think that, Simon, that's where we can sit.
Listen, let's draw the curtain down for this show at least.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.